brought to life with shocking realism. It was a perilous journey through hell turned upside down. It was also a harrowing experience for its real-life stars.
Hey, camera.
But even more challenging was producer Irwin Allen's struggle to bring this epic story to the big screen. It was a fight he almost lost.
The film very nearly became the film that never was.
A battle against the odds, on screen and off.
You raise your hand, those that are going to get killed, raise your hand.
On Backstory, the Poseidon adventure.
Oh my God.
More than 3 decades after its release, the Poseidon adventure still stands as the prototype for the big-budget disaster movie. But it was a film that almost didn't get made at all.
Margaret, call a production meeting. Full staff, please.
Yes, sir, right away.
In 1969, Irwin Allen was a hugely popular television producer and a showman in the old Hollywood tradition. He loved fantasy, spectacle, and all the special effects and gadgetry that could bring big-screen movie magic to television.
I would say the 2 words that you associate most with Irwin: give me more and make it bigger. More, more, more.
And he was like a kid. Look, he just loved it all.
But television wasn't big enough to hold Irwin Allen's cinematic vision. The prolific producer now sought to return to his first love, feature films. Scouring bookshelves for available properties, he soon found the movie project of his dreams, Paul Gallico's best-selling novel, The Poseidon Adventure, the terrifying tale of a luxury ocean liner that capsizes after being hit by a 90-foot tidal wave. The story was classic Irwin Allen. It started off with a spectacular disaster and then followed the desperate struggle of 10 survivors as they climbed their way up to the bottom of the ship.
He used to call it the Walter Mitty syndrome. You take an ordinary person and put them in an extraordinary situation. And if they rise to the situation and overcome it, that's what every one of us would like to think that we could do.
Allen envisioned the Poseidon Adventure as a grand-scale Hollywood epic with an all-star cast and sensational special effects.
Irwin always thought he could do anything. So, you know, that didn't surprise me too much.
But despite Irwin Allen's confidence in the Poseidon Adventure, his home studio, 20th Century Fox, was reluctant to finance the project. Audiences now seem to prefer smaller and more intimate character-driven films. A star-studded spectacle like the Poseidon Adventure was considered a thing of the past, and the project was quickly known around Hollywood as Irwin's Folly.
Nothing like this had been done before. And everybody was telling Irwin, you can't do that. There's no way you can do it. And he said, I know I can do it.
After nearly 2 years of struggle, Irwin was given the green light for his project. Armed with a tight $5 million budget, he ordered that meticulous storyboards be made. Every single shot and every penny spent had to be carefully planned in advance. Irwin also bucked current casting trends, passing over the actors considered Hollywood's hottest new properties. Instead, he assembled a dream team of seasoned veterans. Among them were Academy Award winners Ernest Borgnine.
Who do you think you are, God himself?
Red Buttons.
Don't think of anything but the latter.
Jack Albertson.
We're gonna come out of this. All of us.
And Shelley Winters.
A fat woman like me can't climb.
In fact, Irwin's only concession to the industry trend would be the casting of Gene Hackman in the pivotal role of the preacher who doubts his faith. Hackman's star-making turn in The French Connection had already made him an odds-on favorite to win that year's Best Actor Oscar, and Irwin was eager to welcome him aboard.
He surrounded himself with the best of people, and he went for talent. Even if they had been on the top and had slipped a little, his premise was get a familiar face.
To provide balance to Irwin's passion for action and spectacle, Fox President Gordon Stolberg ordered that director Ronald Neame be brought on board.
Because I did give a solemn warning to every member of the cast. I said, now look, before the film is over, you're all gonna hate my guts, but I can't help it.
A filmmaker known for his sensitive direction of intimate human dramas, Neame was still riding high on his recent success with the critically acclaimed film The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie.
I came over and I said I'd stay 6 weeks and see what could be done, and began to like Irwin, and Irwin began to put up with me. And so one thought, all right, the characters are somewhat on the cardboardy side. It's all action stuff, and I like directing actors in more subtle scenes. However, why not?
Another Oscar winner, Sterling Siliphant, was brought in to add depth and dimension to the story's human characters. He would also have to master the logistical challenges of making the story's fantastic premise believable and cinematically possible. With script, cast, and director in place, Irwin Allen was confident that the Poseidon adventure would be an enormous hit, but what he didn't count on was that his biggest challenge yet would be the obstacle placed in front of him by his home studio. 20th Century Fox was drowning in red ink, following a recent string of musical disappointments. Newly installed studio chief Dennis Stanfill was looking to cut costs wherever possible. The Poseidon Adventure's $5 million budget was an easy target. With just 2 weeks to go before the commencement of principal photography, studio president Gordon Stolberg summoned an unsuspecting Irwin Allen to his office.
As Irwin told the story many times that I had heard, he said, before my fanny hit the cushion, Gordon said, by the way, I'm canceling your movie.
He said, we've got to make it. He said, no, we're not going to make the film. It's going to be scrapped. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Fox didn't want to do it. They didn't want to go for a $5 million budget, I understand.
And Irwin was in shock, I think, because they had already gone into building the sets and budgeting and everything. It was all done.
And Irwin went back to his office crying.
But Hollywood's master showman had accomplished the impossible before, and he refused to give up without a fight. Irwin convinced Stolberg and Stanfill to guarantee half of the $5 million he needed. In exchange, he promised to find the other $2.5 million himself and find it fast.
He goes across the street to Hillcrest Country Club, where Cheryl Corwin and Steve Brodie, two of his old pals, were playing gin rummy.
And said, hey, you guys, would you guarantee with me $2.5 million? And they said, yes, by all means, but don't interrupt our gin rummy game, if you please.
Miraculously, Irwin's nick-of-time effort to save his pet project paid off. But now, the producer faced yet another challenge. The Poseidon Adventure was once again ship-shape and would launch on schedule. But would Irwin's folly make Irwin Allen a Hollywood legend? Or would it leave him a laughingstock?
Let me get speed, gentlemen. Speed, camera.
When Backstory returns, Irwin Allen puts his reputation on the line and puts the Poseidon cast through the most grueling experience of their careers.
Sometimes I feel a little bit like the guy on the Caine Mutiny, like Queeg. I think I'm losing my marbles completely.
Shooting on the Poseidon Adventure began in April of 1972. Irwin Allen had beat the odds and was full speed ahead on the greatest and most complex undertaking of his life. The film's initial pre-capsizing scenes were filmed in Long Beach, California, in the luxurious quarters of the Queen Mary.
The Queen Mary, of course, was a godsend to us because all that storm stuff is shot on the Queen Mary. And we were very careful to always have the camera on a crane separate from the ship, so that by doing this with the camera and this and this and this, we were able to put the Queen Mary to sea in a storm when she was a solid Rock of Gibraltar in Long Beach. And with the aid of great big Ritter fans and fire hoses, we really did create a splendid storm sequence. Irwin said, Ronnie, you're rocking the ship too much, it'll be dreadful. And to a certain extent, he wanted to look over my shoulder. But I was in a very strong position. I had been brought in by the president of the company. But you have to get on with the producer, and the producer has to get on with the director. It's a difficult relationship.
When location shooting finished, production moved to the Fox lot to film the disastrous capsizing and its aftermath.
Let's go make a rehearsal.
Yeah, let's make a rehearsal.
The capsizing of the SS Poseidon showcased an impressive array of special effects.
What the hell's happening?
It was achieved through a combination of live action shots and lifelike miniatures created by special effects veteran L.B. Abbott.
So the first thing I had to do was to think, well, what would happen? Well, it would go like that, and of course, everything would start slipping off the tables, and then it would go a bit further, and they'd hit the side wall. And finally, people would be hanging by their hands, dropping from the ceiling, which had been the floor, down into the mess below.
We had a piece of set that we actually tilted, and right in the beginning, when the ship starts to roll, we tilted the set and literally dumped the cast out of that set. And I did it by picking up one side of the set with a forklift. I mean, it was that cheap.
Jesus Christ, what happened?
We've turned over.
Irwin Allen himself was on hand, helping to direct the elaborate action sequences.
Now, at this point, there will be the first explosion, and you will run now.
The difficult scene became a true collaborative effort on the part of an expert team.
A couple of dead people, maybe somebody on the light vehicle, right there. Would you raise your hand? Those that are going to get killed, raise your hand.
Stuntman turned actor Ernie Orsatti was chosen to perform the stunt that would become the most unforgettable moment in one of the most terrifying movie scenes of all time. But there was a last-moment setback.
Ernie says, I don't want to do this. I'm an actor now. He says, I want to double. And so I said, Ernie, I'll be killed and so will you, because this was all my idea, and you better get up on that table and go for it. So he went up, and anyway, he's hanging there and he's going, Krieber, I'll never forgive you. The rest is history.
May I have your attention, please? That's the way out. That's our only chance. We're floating upside down. We've got to climb up.
Both cast and crew still had a grueling 12 weeks ahead of them. But as they began their odyssey through Irwin Allen's vision of hell turned upside down, it became clear to everyone that the true star of the film would be William Krieber's ingeniously designed set. Krieber used detailed photographs and blueprints of the Queen Mary to create an environment of astounding realism.
It was just awesome to walk in there and look, because it was so real and so wonderful. And we began to see then how wonderful this film could be, that we had never seen anything like this.
Years before the arrival of computer-generated imagery, the crew of the Poseidon Adventure brought to life some of the most difficult special effects ever attempted. And the water, the fire, and the explosions were all real.
There was steam coming at us, there was fire on water. It was all so real, it was happening. We didn't have to act with imaginary things.
And I'm amazed that when I look at them now, I say, how the hell did we do that? And how did we do it on so little money? You know, we didn't have the laser, all this technical stuff that they have now.
And it was almost horrifying to the production people doing budgets when they realized what it was going to take to do that scene. They didn't realize how many hoses and firemen and standbys and cameras, you know, 2 or 3 cameras and cranes and everything.
For Irwin Allen, the #1 priority was the safety of everyone on the set.
He was always there, and he was always pleading one thing: be careful.
Okay, so that no one is in danger, is that right? Not one chance in 10 million.
He was so worried about his cast and crew that you wouldn't believe. No one ever got hurt. And you saw pianos falling, and you saw people coming through skylights. It was the most amazing thing.
It was a very difficult film to make physically, and because you were walking on with a pipe, and when you've got that much steam and smoke on a set, it's tiring.
Physically, it was, I would say it was almost an annoying picture to do. We had to be wet down every day. It was very uncomfortable.
Each of them had a temperament about once every 10 days. which was pretty good. But of course, that was one a day for me, you see. So I had to cope with one of them blowing their top.
For one scene that required a frightening 40-foot climb, director Ronald Neame realized that some heroism was called for.
Says, I want you to know that Mr. Krieber here has made it totally safe for you, so you have nothing to worry about. And he turns around and literally runs up through the set, swings like an ape up through this whole set, all the way to the top. I don't know his age then, but he shouldn't have been doing that. But anyway, he proved a point, and everybody went.
Despite the 125 stunt people on hand, many cast members opted to do much of their own stunt work.
Come on! What are you doing up there? Taking a coffee break? Move it! Move it!
They all wanted to do it themselves. It sort of grew, you know. I mean, that one didn't want to be outdone by the other.
Hey! The blood starts to run faster, you know, and you say, hot dog, here we go. And sometimes I say to myself, what am I doing? But I did it.
But no one could outdo Shelley Winters in her underwater swimming scene. A dedicated method actress, Winters had gained 35 pounds to become more believable in her role as the portly Mrs. Rosen. But that wasn't enough. She also asked the head stuntman to teach her to swim like her character, a former underwater swimming champion.
I'm a very good swimmer. Johnny Weissmuller taught me to swim years ago in Brooklyn, but I want to practice underwater swimming.
Anybody timing him?
I am.
You see, swimming through corridors and up and down stairwells, I'm the only one here trained to do things like that.
Uh-oh, what's the matter? The rope, it's not going through. What do we do? What do we do?
Now, be careful.
Now, you think I'm planning to be careless?
What the hell does she think she's doing?
She insisted on doing it. She would not take a stunt woman. She did that swimming and holding her breath and coming up. She deserves a lot of credit because it was a tough, tough scene.
She found her. She must have found her.
Oh, thank God.
You see, Mr. Scott, in the water, I'm a very skinny lady.
Despite the tremendous technical challenges, shooting was completed 2 full days ahead of schedule.
Rogo! Get them through!
And although he loved expensive special effects, Irwin Allen never forgot that his first responsibility as a producer was to bring his film in under budget. But one casualty of his conscientious spending was a special effects shot intended to supply the very last image of the film, an aerial view of the capsized ship as the survivors fly off in a helicopter.
It just looked awful. And so we, well, let's reshoot it. Well, what's that gonna cost? And his attitude about bringing that picture in absolutely on budget was so heavy, he just wouldn't approve redoing it.
With shooting successfully completed, Irwin Allen's professional gamble appeared to have paid off. But the Poseidon survivors still faced one more obstacle that would test whether Irwin's folly would be a failure. Coming up, the actors get a chance to dry off, and Irwin Allen gets his place in the sun. More than 3 years after he had begun work on his production, Irwin Allen was finally ready to unveil the finished product. Premiering on December 12, 1972, the Poseidon adventure was bigger, more sensational, and more frightening than anything Hollywood had turned out in years. And audiences went wild for it. For Irwin Allen, it represented a tremendous professional and personal triumph.
I can't imagine anything being more exciting. When it opened up, we went down to Westwood, I remember, and we looked and saw a big, huge line around the block and we couldn't believe our eyes. I think it was one of the first pictures of that era where people went back to see it 10, 15, 20 times, you know. Unbelievable to me.
It was popular all over the world. Amazing thing, isn't it? To think that you can do something that's seen by every people in the world practically, and they come up and say, oh, that ship that you were on, la barca, the ship, you know, in Spanish. And it was the most amazing thing you've ever seen in your life.
Critics liked the Poseidon adventure almost as much as the general public did, and so did members of the motion picture industry. The film was nominated for 9 Academy Awards, eventually winning 2. One for the song The Morning After.
Oh, can't you see the morning after?
And another for outstanding visual effects. Studio executives no longer referred to the Poseidon adventure as Irwin's folly. Instead, they looked on with awe as it went on to become Hollywood's top-grossing film of 1973, earning nearly $100 million at the box office. And as for Irwin's pals Cheryl Corwin and Steve Brody, who had rescued the film during their gin rummy game, for them, the Poseidon adventure turned out to be the investment of a lifetime. Ironically, none of them had ever been asked to write a check for any of the money they had promised.
They made tremendous profits, especially for never having to put up a cent.
Irwin Allen was suddenly one of the most powerful producers in Hollywood. And for his next film, The Towering Inferno, both 20th Century Fox and Warner Brothers were anxious to put up a whopping $14 million.
All right, go, Mac, go.
The massive success of The Towering Inferno sealed Irwin Allen's title as Hollywood's undisputed master of disaster. Not only had he become Hollywood's top money-making producer, Irwin Allen had pioneered a whole new genre. His films inspired a string of imitators, and for years, audiences would associate the name Irwin Allen with disaster movies he didn't even produce. The Poseidon Adventure has now attained the status of a cult classic.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Miss Shelley Winters.
It remains a perennial favorite on television and home video, and fans turn out in droves for special theatrical screenings around the country.
It's like Rocky Horror Show. They know every line before it's said. They say it with it or before it.
Even the stars of the film enjoy recounting their favorite scenes.
I think it's when I lose my wife, when she falls into the fire, and I go kind of berserk.
Linda! Linda! Linda!
He says to Gene Hackman, "You killed her! Linda! My Linda! The only woman I ever loved! You killed her! You killed her! You killed her!"
You killed her!
Actually, he didn't say woman, the only thing he ever loved, but I like being called a woman, you know.
The disaster classic has even inspired a stage satire and a musical parody.
Well, naughty. Your brother's dead.
Irwin Allen always considered the Poseidon Adventure one of his proudest accomplishments. And for those who knew the man as well as those who simply love his movies, he will always be remembered for his fascination with the fantasy world of the cinema and his ability to accomplish the impossible.
I think he's one of the last of the truly original producers who would never take no for an answer and were full of ideas and chutzpah and outrageousness and defied the law of possibility.
Each new disaster film that comes along will always try to outperform the last. But the SS Poseidon has proven unsinkable.